and welcome to Two Words Wolves podcast. I'm Ryan Eichten. With me is Andrew Carlson. Andrew, how you doing?
Doing well. I'm doing well. Another late one for us. Feels like this is a commonplace nowadays. But hey, we're here after a Wolves loss, which I think the last couple times is after a Wolves win.
Yeah, Wolves lose their first playoff game at home in this postseason. 115 to 108 to the Spurs. They're now down 2-1 after dropping the last two games of the series. I just think like the bigger picture takeaway is like this. It's kind of in the title of my article is like back to reality. This is kind of where we thought the series would be coming into it. That the Spurs are just the better and more healthy team, and so the Wolves find themselves down 2-1. Certainly not the end of the series by even close by any stretch, but I think it's going to be an uphill battle like it always was.
Yeah, and I guess the good thing about this game is that you could see that Anthony Edwards is clearly a little more healthy on the health note from the Wolves. But yeah, I mean, I think if you thought that the Wolves were going to be up 2-1 in this series, I'd probably have given you like 5-1 odds on that heading into it. This is always going to be the position in the series that maybe we thought the Wolves were going to be in. And frankly, with Dante DiVincenzo, if Dante DiVincenzo were healthy, I still think that the Wolves are it's still probably a 2-1 series. And it at the end of the day, it is a make or miss league. And tonight, it was certainly make or miss with shots. That's really what things came down to. Surely Victor Wembanyama had an excellent night. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit. I mean, 39 points, 13 of 18 shooting, 3 of 5 from 3. He's a 35% three-point shooter. He shot 60% from 3 tonight. 15 rebounds, 5 blocks. I mean, he was all over the place. And clearly now this team is rattled by his presence down low. That's very apparent. And so it's just, but at the end of the day, the Wolves still had a chance to pull this one out after an abhorrent start, and they just couldn't do it. They just didn't make enough shots.
Yeah, and I think just more broadly, they didn't execute well enough. And that includes shot making, but I thought at times they didn't get good enough looks either. Or certainly early in the game was turning it over a bunch. But yeah,
and defensively too. I mean, Chris Finch after the game talked about game plan mistakes, multiple game plan mistakes on Rudy Gobert.
Which has been a theme the entire season.
Absolutely, and Rudy Gobert was called out specifically by him for a couple game plan mistakes.
Oh, you didn't call it Julius, huh?
No, Julius.
No.
No, Julius.
He never calls out Julius. Like I wasn't at post game media today. We've been swapping that role with both of us here at Target Center. I think back to game 1 where I asked Finch, Julius didn't have an assist until the fourth quarter. What does he got to do better? I don't remember my exact question, but basically there's always the question you ask and what you're actually asking. What I was actually asking was like, Julius, no assists. What the hell? And he immediately went into coach mode and goes, well, everyone needs to pass the ball better. And I was like, yeah, but like Julius is he always does that. And I thought tonight was another example of that.
Well, but to give him an out tonight, I feel like calling out Julius's defense would be calling out a 16th of the issues that Julius Randle had tonight. I mean,
he had 0 assists in this game.
If we called, I mean, because I thought Rudy Gobert otherwise was pretty good, and like even with defensive game plan mistakes, I feel like he's someone that you can probably call out for having that tonight. I mean, he was still effective. I thought he played a solid offensive game. It could have been better. Julius Randle just had a terrible game all around. Yeah. I thought that this was, this might be recency bias, but I thought this was probably his worst game of the playoffs so far. Just between defensive issues, he had 5 fouls. He nearly fouled out of the game. That was one side of the ball. The other side of the ball was not making shots, not being aggressive, extreme indecision starting at the beginning of the game for him. And it amounted to what I would say is his worst game of the postseason so far.
Absolutely. Game 1 of the Denver series is the only other possible contender there. And I guess before we keep going, if you hear background noise, they're kind of packing away Target Center around us. So I guess I apologize for that if that's... but that's how it goes in the postseason,
that's
right?
How it rolls, man.
There's a ton of people here. Media, our usual spot downstairs was kind of taken up by other people. So
it's an away game for us. We got to respond.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's start with let's keep going with the early start. So they just can't make a shot. They missed their first 12 shots in the game. They're down 11-1 and then 18-3 before Rudy hits their first field goal almost 7 minutes into the game. And I think looking back, that was the stretch that ended up costing them the game in a lot of ways, because if they aren't down, if they're only down 5 instead of 15 at the beginning of the game, then the big stretch, their big run they go on at the end of the first quarter gets them to like a big lead. And so I just thought that was a consistent theme throughout the game, is they just could not execute offensively well enough to keep pace with the game. And Wembanyama is just the big, I mean, that, I don't know if we want to break down his game, but you mentioned it, 39 points, 15 rebounds, 5 blocks, the first of which was a fairly clear goaltend. He was a monster, and the Wolves just, they really need Dante DiVincenzo in this series. It's very clear. Like with Wembanyama is just absolutely locking down the paint, and the Wolves can't really defend well enough with Rudy on the bench. And so there's just a lot of holes the Wolves need to plug. But ultimately, if they only fell down a couple of points instead of 15, I think they have a much better shot of winning this game.
Well, and ironically, too, I think the thing about the bad start was that, the thing about, and even last game, too, in game 3, or in game 2, I'm sorry, they're getting lucky because San Antonio is starting almost just as poorly. Yeah. I mean, they're playing good. The Wolves are playing good defense. Sure, I'll give them credit for that. But as poor as they're starting out games offensively, San Antonio is playing just as bad. San Antonio, with the way that the Spurs ended up playing, they could have very easily gone out to a 25-1 lead in this game. They missed so many shots at the beginning. Not only open three-pointers, they missed bunnies near the rim. They were just as bad, man, and it was still, like you said, 11-1 at one point in time, and then Finch called a timeout, and the Wolves had 1 point with 5:08 left in the first quarter. Like, that's pathetic. I mean, it is very emblematic of how the season has gone so far, because they ended the first quarter with 22 points and went on a nice offensive run there to kind of close out the quarter. But they got lucky, man. They got bailed out. This game could have been over in the first quarter, and there was nothing that they could have done about it. But lucky for them, the Spurs came out pretty cold too, and kind of went from there. But yeah, it's this is one of those series where you have to set the tone early on. If you're going to be physical, you have to be physical right away. You can't wait. You can't wait to impose your will. If you're going to make shots, if you're going to be aggressive offensively, as close as this game was, the Wolves really could have used a couple more buckets earlier on in the game. Jaden McDaniels was part of that. It just feels like they're not imposing their will early on, which is what they did against Denver, man. They had no problem doing that against Jokic and Denver right away early on in the first quarter. With San Antonio, they're just coming out a little bit skittish, and I think the Wemby effect is starting to take its toll. They said after game 1, there were all of those clippings, there were all of the quotes of, we're going to keep going at him. We're not afraid of him at the basket. We're going to keep doing it. And they have completely shifted gears. Completely. Jaden McDaniels is skittish inside. Terrence Shannon Jr. is not. Terrence Shannon Jr. had a great game tonight. Don't get me wrong there. Terrence Shannon Jr. played very, very well. He was plus 19, which jumps out of the box score right away. But when he said after the game, he's like, I'm going to keep attacking the rim. Wemby, I'll dunk on Wemby if he challenges me. Like, the Wolves had no fear after game 1 in what they were saying, and now they clearly have fear now in their actions of going to the rim against Wembanyama.
Yeah, I think that's just, to me, the biggest story of this game, this series, is how are the Wolves going to score with Victor Wembanyama on the court? And to me, for a lot of it was just sitting Rudy, and they had to play 5 out, and even that's not perfect because Wembanyama will guard like Shannon, and he's just kind of laying off of Shannon, letting him shoot. That's where the DiVincenzo, where you're really missing Dante, where you could have Ant and Dante and Jaden, like all these really, really good 3-point shooters, so there's nowhere to hide. When he was guarding Julius at many points of the game and just wasn't guarding him from 3.
Which, for me, that's where Julius comes in, man. Like, that's how you have to make Wemby less effective in this series. Like, it starts with Julius Randle. Like, I know Rudy Gobert is the best post defender on the team, whatever. Wemby's bothered by strong big men, like someone who can knock him off his spot, make him work really hard, and that's Julius Randle. Like, I do think Julius, when he is on, does an effective job guarding Wemby, keeping him away from the basket, causing him to settle for jump shots. That's the name of the game. You have to get him to settle for jump shots. And that's where Julius comes in. He just has to be better. I mean, it's on the defensive end with not fouling. It's on the offensive end with crashing the glass and being more decisive. He was poor tonight. I mean, there were he had 2 turnovers. It felt like he maybe had closer to 5 or 6, just because there were so many times where he had a wide open teardrop that he could have floated, but instead he would try and dump it off to Rudy or try and laser it out to the perimeter when he would have a wide open shot, or he would take a bad 3-pointer instead of maybe attacking the rim and attacking a closeout. A lot of indecisiveness is where it started with him tonight, where it was a really frustrating game.
Yeah, and they just, with whatever lineups they're gonna Rudy offered, they need Julius to be.
Have to.
They've been searching for this all year, and it just, I'm trying to save the big picture stuff until the end, but this whole series to me, and you're always going to come up against a team that was at like the real championship contenders, which the minute Denver started playing, like there was only 2 left. It was San Antonio and OKC. The big picture questions about this team have really shown themselves to what this team is about, and what it's their big rotation is like. Can you do enough with Julius? Can you do enough with Rudy? But let's save that discussion till the end here. Let's kind of break down, because I thought at the end of the game, because through it all, they were down 2 with the ball with 5 minutes left. And I thought their execution down the stretch of the game was what ended up losing the game. And where I think, I mean, if San Antonio's going to execute better down the stretch of these games, like they're just going to win this series, because that's where like the experience has to win out for the Wolves. And in game 1 it did, and in game 3 it did not. I thought the Wolves were not, again, another aspect of something they haven't been able to attack well enough, consistently enough throughout the season, is the Spurs were just throwing 2 defenders at Ant, and Ant only has 4 shot attempts in this fourth quarter, and they were just not creating advantage. Like, they were playing 4-on-3 in the back end, and you can remember that game, the one Denver game they won during the regular season, where they were just hammering that. Denver was guarding Ant with 2, and they were just getting shot after good shot, and that was not happening tonight. And obviously Wemby's presence at the rim is the biggest factor in that. But I just didn't feel like they were executing. It probably deserves a rewatch to really dig into what they were doing there. And then kind of going back to Dante, I thought, to me, the biggest way that the Wolves are going to be able to overcome the Wemby of it all, which tonight was like a...
He was a 5-alarm fire.
This is the game where you just, can we get the Wolves to the Eastern Conference type of game? Because this guy Wemby is like a bad offensive player. I'm kind of being hot takey with that, but like, he has so much room to grow with this offensive game.
He's not that strong on
the ball. And they don't post him up. It's insane. Like I was saying to you, like, if I'm a Spurs fan, I'm like, can you get this guy to Kareem, get this guy to Hakeem, and have him get Minnesota and get him to Kevin McHale. Like, get him a post game, because like there's no way teams are going to stop him. But I just, the way the Wolves are going to win this series is with bombing threes and with pace. And this whole series, I don't think they've had enough pace. And that's, again, I keep coming back to this. So much of the stuff I feel like they're not doing in this series is stuff that they didn't do enough of during the regular season.
Well, their best player's back now, and he doesn't play with pace.
He just doesn't play with pace. And that's just such a big thing. And Bones has been kind of played out of this series, and Iowa's not 100%, so that's a lot of the pace that's missing there. But, like, and it needs to come with their best player. And again, I'm saving the big picture stuff until the end. But, like, all of this comes down to their best player. And Ant has deserved a pass. He just hasn't been healthy, and he probably still isn't healthy, and was able to gut through it. But so much of this comes down to their best player, and he's awesome, and he's amazing. But, like, for them to win the title, for them to beat a 62-win Spurs team, they just need Ant to be 11 out of 10, and he was 9.5 out of 10 in this game.
Yeah, I give him a 9.5. He was really good.
And it feels weird to it's this weird zone where it's like you need him to be better than he is while also admitting like he's awesome.
I would even combine him with Julius. Like him and Julius need to be a
Well, if you're
9.
combining him with Julius,
Well, that's what
then
I'm saying is like him and Julius need to be a 9, I think, in order to win this series. And him and Julius together so far have been like what, a 3, a 4.
I mean, if we're doing Ant 9.5,
we're putting them
and
together,
giving Julius
it's
a 2, so they're
like
averaging
4,
out like just
5.
5.
Yeah, like like a 5. Like I would group because I would group them together because I think Wemby and Stephon Castle have been, they've been a 8. I think Castle's been a 6. Wemby's been pretty close to a 10. So I'd put them at an 8.
Wemby was pretty bad in game 1.
Yeah. Well, exactly, and that's the game that they lost. I mean, so that's just it. That's been the difference. I mean, if you really want to boil it down into what best players versus best players, I completely agree with you. Ant needs to be amazing, but Julius, like, they need. I just can't emphasize it enough, man. Like in order to have any sort of a fighting chance in this series, if they don't have Julius Randle on board, man, you might as well pack this thing up right now.
Yeah, and this is the type of game that if they do end up losing this series, and we're talking when we have whatever offseason discussions, it's just like, yeah, maybe it's time to move on from Julius Randle. But again, we'll save that for the offseason. I thought Iowa was solid, but for a guy, I don't think he's 100%. So I think you got to commend him for his outing. Nas was great on offense, but the defense is just isn't there enough. That's been a thing all season. And then Terrence Shannon Jr., I think, deserves a ton of credit. Plus 19 in this game. Obviously, plus minus it is what it is. But Iowa deserves a ton of credit for how he's played. Or excuse me, TJ deserves a ton of credit for how he's played. Like during the regular season, aside from the last week of the season, he was like as bad as anyone in the entire league. And so to give him credit in front of his college coach, who was in attendance in this one, along with my college coach, Fred Hoiberg, like they needed desperately Terrence in this series, and he's been able to give them everything. And I thought the defense which was been awful, and what Finch called him out on, when was that, at practice? All the days blend together, whenever that was. He called him out of practice, and I thought Shannon was great on defense. And so if we're breaking down, like, they need more from everyone. It's hard to ask for more from Shannon, who, has given them, like, he's the only one really pushing the pace. You mentioned he had the line on Wembanyama about continuing to go to the paint. Mixed results there, but I mean, it's hard. This is the Terrence Shannon we thought we were getting all year.
Absolutely.
So I guess that gives you hope that, I mean, I would expect him. He's a big X factor off the bench for the Wolves in this series without Dante.
Got to be in the rotation next year. No question about it. I think that he's reserved his spot, and you kind of have to just at this point go down with the ship because you see what he's able to do. Like, you see what he's capable of. And I thought more so tonight, more than any other night, this was a big step forward for Terrence Shannon because he was effective without scoring.
Yeah.
He had 0 points, I believe, into the third quarter. And he finished the game plus 19. He was not doing his typical attack the basket, score 15, 20 points when you do have the Terrence Shannon games. Like, those are the games in which he is most effective, is when he's scoring a ton, he's pushing pace, he's running the floor. Tonight, I think he did all of the things that don't actually show up in the box score, and they ended up in the aggregate showing up on the scoreboard when he was in the game. I think Nas was the only other player that finished it with a positive plus minus. I think part of that was they did play a little bit together, but man, he just brought energy. He does also bring a certain level of fearlessness. Now, he does have a lot. I don't want to sugarcoat. Like, he does have a long way to go. Like, there's no question about it. There are some IQ things that he just needs to clean up and get better at with passing the ball and what he does when he drives. But he's given this team a spark, man. He's given this team a spark in the playoffs. And similar to last year when we thought that he would have his rotation spot kind of crowned heading into the following year, I think it does actually have to be the non-fool's gold thing that happened last year, this year. I mean, he has to. He's bookmarked his spot. And And again, 33% from the field and 5 points. You wouldn't think that's anything special, but he was a plus 19. And that's something that we do not typically see from a Terrence Shannon box score.
Absolutely. Okay, let's get to my big picture thoughts, because I have a bunch of them. And the first is they just have not been able to generate really any quality looks with Rudy Gobert on the court while Wembanyama is on the court. And Fincher's done a good job matching Rudy's minutes with Cornette, so that they can play Rudy as much as possible. And they can't just sit Rudy the entire game. Like they need to play Rudy minimum of 30 minutes.
His minutes against Cornette were good. I mean, that was some of the best basketball that the team played. Granted, because Cornette was in the game.
Yeah, I just think I go back to I'm a big proponent of this. It's not, to me, it's not like you don't have to win all that. You'll see you need to have this during the regular season. You need to have this offensive rating. All of that is whatever. But to me, the habits you generate throughout the regular season are what you can lean on during this postseason and every postseason. And this team has just always had. They haven't really ever found the offense with Rudy Gobert on the court their entire time. And so I just think that this is the extreme of it all. That usually it's not this extreme, but they just have to space the court more with Rudy on the court, and when Wemby's on the court and they don't have enough of it, and they don't have enough actions that keep Rudy engaged, where Wembanyama is just parked next to the rim. It's not that he's ignoring Rudy, but Rudy's just not a spacer.
Well, and I think part of that too, and it was big time on display tonight because Jaden McDaniels was so poor inside the perimeter. He was end of the game 5-22. He was 2 of 14 inside the perimeter, which is not Jaden McDaniels-esque. I think one of those things that they can do to really free that up, and I've kind of been banging the table for it all series, is more Jaden Rudy pick and roll. Jaden is the best mid-range scorer on the team by a mile. He's also one of the better pick and roll partners with Rudy that's more willing to pass him the ball. And my thing all series has been, you have to make Victor Wembanyama choose. You have to make him choose hard. You can't just have him meander in the middle of the paint and do his thing, because that's what he loves to do. He looks like he's not going to do anything, and then he springs into action and smacks it into the fifth row. Jaden needs to be more active in a pick and roll with Rudy. Either make Wemby choose to guard Rudy, or make Wemby switch and guard Jaden and then dish it off to Rudy and take advantage of a mismatch. That's kind of been the thing that I've wanted to see more of all series, and I just haven't seen it. And again, it wasn't just Julius that was indecisive tonight. I thought Jaden was pretty indecisive tonight as well, and Jaden just played an overall extremely poor game. I think he was a team low -15, which is extremely uncharacteristic for him. I mean, he's just someone, again, we talk about Julius and Ant being a 5. I mean, if you throw Jaden in there tonight, it was like a 3, because he had probably for sure his worst game of the playoffs, one of his worst games of the season. So, yeah, I would love to see that a little bit more. But to your point too, the Gobert minutes were extremely effective with Cornette on the floor, and I think that ultimately, going off of your point on pace and space, if you are going to win this series, and Victor Wembanyama is going to play a substantial amount of minutes, your small ball lineups have to be effective. You can't rely on Rudy when Wemby's on the floor. I think that you have to find a way to spread Wemby out. Again, make him choose. Is he going to be in the corner? Is he going to be on the wing? Where on the perimeter is he going to be? And attacking the other side of it and making him commit to the basket and then kicking out. These drive and kicks. Drive and kick was a big theme of Chris Finch's post-game press conference and even in the locker room as well. It's clearly part of the Wolves' game plan is to drive and kick and make Wemby commit. And they just can't do it at a high enough level. And so that's what I would like to see moving forward is more actions for this team to make Wemby commit to things. And I think Jaden and Rudy's pick and roll is one of those things that can do that.
Yeah, I agree. And I was just kind of counting it up. The Wolves' top 3 offensive players, Jaden, Julius, and Ant, were combined 20 of 60 in this game. And that's just not going to get it done. Your top 3 offensive players are making only a third of their shots. The other big picture thing I thought was just when they were doubling Ant, I mean, they were just not even like a screen or a hedge. It was just like the second Ant got across half court, they were doubling, and that should just lead to open buckets. And obviously they got Wemby parked in the rim, and you can only take so many threes or whatever. But like, I just didn't think they were generating enough quality looks from that action. And it just makes me think that they need to just like, I think 43-point attempts like isn't enough. Like they just,
yeah, I agree with that.
I think in the half court you just start bombing threes and they got to push. You got to push the because you're just even when Gobert isn't out there and you have your best offensive lineup out there with whatever combination of players you have, like you're just gonna have a hard time scoring against Wemby. And I've been incredibly impressed with Wemby's defensive performance in this series. But and you got to push and you got to shoot threes. But like with the Ant doubles, they're not generating enough, and that goes back to the regular season where I didn't think, like, it's just something about this team that they don't. I mean, look, they're an incredibly successful organization. They're now in the final 8 for the third straight year in a row. They're one of the, pick your number, 6 best teams in the NBA, 7, whatever. It doesn't matter. Like, they're one of the best teams in the NBA, but there's just, they don't, to win 4 straight playoff series, you just have to, I think, more of your players have to have like this analytical mindset of, oh, you're doing this, I'm going to beat it with this. Oh, you're doing that, I'm going to beat it with that. Where you just have like almost this supercomputer mind.
Mm-hmm.
And at least they just don't have many players that have that. And that almost doesn't matter. It's like their best player isn't quite wired like that. And it doesn't need to be a whole referendum on Ant, but it's just like, you need a little bit more of just like making the simple right pass. And I keep mentioning it, but like, if you remember in game 2, Dante hits the big 3 that more or less and seals the game. And that's Denver brought 2. Dante was 1 pass away. And to me, it's just such a killer. Cause I don't think the Spurs could run this defense if Dante was on the court and 1 pass away, where he's just bombing threes, whenever he got the ball. And so
it's just, there's a lot of, and I think too, take a shot every time I say it, but it's real. It's the indecision of everything too. There were so many times. I mean, you talked about how you'd like to see more 3-point attempts. How many times did you count tonight where they took a bad pump fake from 3 and dribbled themselves into a worse situation? I know Nas did it a couple times. Jaden for sure did it a couple times, where they had a wide open look. They pump faked it thinking that they could get a hard closeout, and they ended up just dribbling and either losing the ball or dribbling to nowhere and not really having a plan with it. It's like, let it bang, man. Like let it fly. Nas had it. I can recall at least 3 times that it happened with Nas. I can recall at least a couple times it happened with Jaden. Io was a big offender of it tonight as well, because he had 4 turnovers, and I know that a couple of those came off of threes.
They're not generating enough half-court offense, so if you get a halfway decent 3, you just got to put it up.
That's my like, just be decisive, man. Like, you have to be decisive. When you do these things where you're half committed and you don't really know what you're going to do or where you're going to go, it's just, that compounds mistakes against Victor Wembanyama, man. Someone who feasts off of indecision. You have to be decisive. If you get your shit sent, you get your shit sent. But that's, at the end of the day, you made a decision and you went with it and you were confident in it. And that's just not at all what this team did tonight. And they got themselves into a lot of really tough situations on the offensive end of the floor.
And last kind of big picture thing, 2 years ago when they went up 1-0 in Denver and Rudy missed game 2 with the birth of his child, what did they do the next game? They stepped up the intensity and they buried a Denver team in game 2. And I thought it was a big mistake for them. I don't think they intentionally did this, but like they did not play the same intensity in game 2. And credit to the Spurs, obviously, for playing a good game, but like most teams do what the Wolves did in game 2, where they just don't, you go up 1-0, you accomplish your goal and you kind of punt the game. But like the Wolves just don't have the margin of error in this series to do that. They're not the better team or the more healthy team. So I thought tonight is a perfect example where overall the Wolves play good. They played solid enough to win. If Denver was on the floor tonight instead of San Antonio, the Wolves win this game pretty easily because Denver's a bunch of you-know-whats. But when you're playing a 60-win team, you can't be punting any playoff games. And I thought that was... There was always going to be a game where the Wolves played well and lost in this series. And so now you're... I don't know, I didn't
even think they played overtly well. I think this is a B game. Maybe. Like I'd give it a C+, frankly.
Yeah, it wasn't a disaster like game 2 was, but it's just like your margin of error was so small, and I just wish they would have, like, if game 2 looked like what we saw tonight, maybe even like a Spurs hit an extra 3 or 2 and it's kind of over by the 5, then great. But like, I just think it was just kind of, I don't know why they just don't have like that. I don't know, it's just been something, I don't even know how to describe it, but it's just been something all year where this team just doesn't have it.
And I'll glass half full it to kind of wrap it up. I thought they played a C+ game tonight, and if their best mid-range scorer hits 2 more inside the perimeter shots, we're having a completely different
Or if they properly call a goaltender, I don't really feel like talking about the officials, but they were poor tonight.
Yeah, they weren't good. They didn't have control
not in a way
game
that cost the Wolves game, although maybe, I don't know, who knows? Like, it was a close game, and the first goaltend, that just has to be called. Like, I don't. Wemby getting called for 0 goaltends through 3 games in this series is insane, and so I don't know. I don't want to talk about. I will say this about the officials: what Tony Brothers did going after Chris Finch is insane.
Yeah,
and should be. I mean, look, the NBA doesn't suspend shit anymore. Excuse my language. A player 2 years ago threw a towel and a heating pack at an official and didn't get suspended. So look, they're not going to suspend Tony Brothers. But like, if Finch said something to you, Tony, then tee him up. You're going after him like. Tony Brothers went at Finch like
you want to fight him.
Like Finch laid in like he was Nikola Jokic. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like that was incredibly unprofessional. It's on the officials to
keep the peace.
Like, I'm sure
keep the flow of the game.
I'm sure what Finch said was offensive, like in a general sense of life. If I said fuck you right now to you, that'd be an offensive thing to say to you. I'm
Correct.
Sure Finch said something in that vein offensive.
But I'd tee you up.
Your job is to not escalate the situation, certainly not be needed to be held back by a player. Like, if we're talking about the rule book, whoever held back the official should be teed up because he put his hands on the official. Like, I just thought that was insane, and it's almost separate from the game itself. But yeah, that was
they just didn't have control of the game tonight. I mean, at the end of the day, that's really what it is. I thought
some of the fouls on the Spurs were
they called fouls that shouldn't have been called, but they let stuff go. They let stuff go that shouldn't have been let go. They just chose the wrong things to call fouls in my mind, and they didn't keep good control of the game. So that's really my main issue with the officiating. I don't think it cost the Wolves one way or another. My big issue, my big thing is, like, I just think the lead of this game is, it is what we talked about. Julius needs to be better, but man, Jaden McDaniels being 2 of 14 inside the perimeter, I'll just keep saying it. Like, that just can't happen, and that's something that he's lethal. That's what he went to when they closed out Denver at Target Center. Like, that was the consistent offense that they kept going back to, was Jaden mid-range. And so, again, he makes 2 more shots, and, a couple other things happen. Actually, no, not even a couple other things happen the Wolves' way. If Jaden makes 2 more shots inside the perimeter, I'm pretty confident that the Wolves end up actually pulling this game out. And we're having a completely different podcast. And I would say overall they played a C+ game. So there's your glass half full to end things out. Like, they are not out of this series. Game 4 will be very telling on what happens. I will write the Wolves eulogy if they lose Game 4. But after Game 3, they played a C+ game. Their best mid-range score was 2 of 14 inside the perimeter, and I think they very well could have ended up stealing this one.
Yeah, and I've probably been too negative in this game. I guess a couple stats to point out. Wolves had a 18-point advantage in second chance points, 30-12. So that's something that just needs to happen, where obviously Wemby grabs 15 rebounds, and he's a good rebounder because he's 7'6", but as far as 7'6" people go, he's not a good rebounder, if that makes any sense. Game duration, 2 hours, 42 minutes. Bleep that. That's
a pretty long game.
I mean, if the game started at 7, whatever, but like...
It was the second quarter that took forever because there was a flagrant review. There were 2 challenges. Like, again, the refs didn't have control of the game. It was poor game flow. A lot of confrontation, a lot of, just we talked about it, but just poor game flow. They didn't maintain a good game flow.
Yeah, and so I'll say I think the Wolves can still win the series. I don't know, should I look up the betting odds or not? It's gonna be favorable to the Wolves. What do you want to guess while I look it up?
I'll go ahead.
Series price?
They were 11 to 1 to open. I'll give him 9 to 1 right now.
It is
plus 900.
Yeah, that's the Vegas. The Spurs are 9 to 1 favorites to win. The Wolves, if you bet the Wolves, you win 6x your money. So
okay, 6 to 1. Okay.
So you only slightly undersold the Wolves, but yeah, and those are always tough. I think on Dane's pod, Matt Moore of Hardwood Paroxysm was explaining, it was like the series prices aren't great because they're trying to hedge money, like they can't have too much money in the Spurs to win, to make the finals, because then they're exposed. It's a whole thing. But yeah, the Wolves went from more or less a coin flip after game 1 to now fairly sizable underdogs again after game 3. I think they're in a much better spot than that to win this series, but it's like it always was going to be an uphill battle.
Very much so an uphill battle.
And it's kind of, here's what maybe my philosophy is, setting game 7s aside, the even-numbered games are almost always the big games. I know people, like, you look at tonight, it's tied 1-1. Whoever wins this has the lead in the series, and that makes sense. But the even-numbered games are always the biggest one. So the Wolves win game 1. If they win game 2, they're in the driver's seat. Series tied. And now game 4 just ends up being the series, where if the Wolves can win, you're in the same spot you were in after game 2, and you're in a coin flip. And if you lose, that might be the last game at Target Center we see this year. So I think the Wolves can win. They need to play 10% better than they did tonight. Maybe you get, if Wemby goes 2 of 5 from 3 and misses an extra turnaround jumper.
That's the other thing, man. Like, he's a 35% 3-point shooter. Like, he's not going to shoot 60. I mean, I don't think so. He's not going to shoot 60% for the rest of the series.
The fact that the 7'6" guy can make 30, even a third of his threes, is insane.
It's amazing. Yeah, but he's 35% 3-point shooter. For the rest of the playoffs, he will not. I do feel comfortable saying for the rest of the playoffs, he will not shoot 60% from 3. So if you can limit a couple of those, that's your start. If you could, the name of the game is just causing him to settle for jump shots, man. Like, try not to try to bump him off his spot, get physical with him, get under him a little bit, and that's what Julius Randle is supposed to be good for. And so non-negotiable game 4 needs to be a Julius Randle game. If not the best player on the Timberwolves, he needs to be one of the best players on the Timberwolves.
Absolutely, and if he's not, well, there'll be plenty of time in the offseason to discuss what's next. But Andrew, thank you for coming on. This will be the end of our game 3, and we'll come back for game 4. Or at least I will come back for game 4 on Sunday night, Mother's Day. We get, not an 8:30 start. We get a pre-7, a 6:30 start.
They're treating us.
And honestly, I wish it was the other way around, so I had more of my Mother's Day to not be at Target Center. But you get what you get. We'll go out to brunch with the family tomorrow. So, but yeah, for Andrew, I'm Ryan. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Go Wolves.
Hey, you.